This session, we will continue to keep the Texas economy number one, and we will improve our schools. But the fact is that better schools and a robust economy don't really mean anything if you don't have safe communities to live in. And that's exactly why we are addressing a problem that's plaguing so many communities across our state. There are judges, especially in our large cities, that are letting dangerous criminals back out on the streets. You would not believe the number of people who have been murdered by someone who was let out on bail who was arrested for a prior murder. It's outrageous. We got to keep murderers behind bars. And that's exactly why I'm making an emergency item to reform the bail system to keep people arrested for murder behind bars.
Austin man accused of murder released on a $100 bond from $800,000 prior. Let's check it out. But he is back in jail, so that's good news.
$800,000 compared to just $100. A big difference when someone needs to pay up to get out of jail. Travis County judge decided a $100 bond was sufficient for a murder suspect, allowing Stephon Morrison to bond out. Morrison is accused of shooting Keyshawn Cage back in October. Police say it happened at an apartment complex in South Austin, and Morrison's hoodie, shoes, and the gun investigators believe was used that night was found about 500 yards away. A witness told detectives Morrison and another person were arguing with Cage, calling Cage a snitch, claiming he worked with law enforcement and got another man locked up. The witness identified Morrison as the shooter. Morrison was arrested on November 6th for murder and tampering with evidence. His bail was set at $800,000. Now, the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure says a person accused of a felony must be released or their bail must be reduced if the state isn't ready for trial within 90 days. Now, the state didn't present these cases to...
That's crazy. That is crazy. That's why I'm so glad Texas is working towards fixing that law, because a murder suspect should not be back on the streets.
To a grand jury until day 91. And the same day, Morrison's attorney asked the judge to let his client out. Last week, the parties met to discuss the possibility. The district attorney claims they told the court about their concerns if Morrison was released. They say on social media he was potentially bragging about the murder, showing violence. They say Cage's family had concerns. And an anonymous tip said Morrison intended to flee if he got out. But the Travis County judge...
The family says that, the girlfriend of the guy who was murdered says that he has been taunting them. Apparently this guy showed up at the funeral or the wake or whatever it was and making them feel real uncomfortable. So they were fearing for their lives because he's back on the streets.
Set the bond at $100 and ordered no contact with the victim's family or witnesses, a GPS monitoring system, no travel, and no social media. The Travis County District Attorney is now requesting the judge to increase the bond amount after Governor Abbott said this on X, quote, "This is outrageous. We must prevent leftist judges from releasing dangerous murderers out on our streets. Those responsible for this release should be held legally liable if anyone is harmed by this criminal." Abbott says bail reform is an emergency item this legislative session, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is backing him.
But there's nothing more important than the safety of our citizens. There's nothing more important than pushing back when courts release dangerous felons onto the streets to kill again.
Reform bills were heard last week in the Senate Criminal Justice Committee. They make it tougher for judges to let violent suspects out on bond and limits the use of tax dollars to help offenders get out of jail.
So whatever it takes, we will not leave here until these bills pass the House. Period.
Yeah, like I said, the guy is back in jail. The bond is now set to $100,000. He's back in cuffs, so he's off of the streets, which is very good. But the whole thing about ankle monitor and no contact with the family, that doesn't matter to a killer. That doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want to do. But I do also want to talk about this district attorney in Austin, Jose Garza. Now, look, the ball was dropped on this whole situation here. Apparently, the whoever was overseeing the case resigned. They missed the 90-day deadline. The new prosecutor got an indictment on the 91st day, so there's that. $447 from $447,000 from George Soros. From the Fair and Justice Prosecution, Texas Organizing Project, Texas Justice and Public Safety PAC. These are how this guy received his donations. These are all backed by George Soros. I mean, here's an example of this guy right here. A man who should have been in prison for a very long time was able to go onto the streets and serve 10 years of probation after assaulting women and exposing himself. Let's check it out.
Tuesday, Antonio Cordero Rios was sentenced to 10 years probation for aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury and injury to a child.
Your sentence is too lenient. You got off easy for what you did. I've heard no remorse from you. I've heard no apology.
On June 30th, 2021, Lynn Isaac became the first of 10 victims. She was the one to speak after his sentence was read.
You're a monster, and I do not forgive you for what you did to me.
On that day, Lynn was on a run when she was confronted by a stranger in a mask.
Yes. After I passed you, I could sense your evil behind me. I remembered looking behind me and seeing you sprinting towards me and grabbing me.
Her Apple
What kind of mask was he wearing? Was it one of those COVID masks? And see, that's one thing with that. People were using those to commit crimes.
Watch captured the chase and struggle that lasted 7 minutes. After being told it would be tough to find out the person who did it by police, Lynn took to Nextdoor and found out other women had encountered the suspect.
While you were hiding, all of your victims were piecing clues together to find you. In the end, it was you that helped us.
Those victims were able to piece together the make and the model of the car, as well as the license plate, even creating a map of where all the incidents happened. These efforts eventually led to Cordero Rios' arrest.
This, in my opinion, is such an incredible story of women in our community coming together, using social media in a way that's positive.
And even though Lynn was the only victim to speak out, the other victims were right there in support.
We were very lucky to come together and bring all the women together to support each other.
On top of 10 years probation, the judge announced Cordero Rios must stay away from all victims and children and register as a sex offender. His defense attorney told Fox 7 his client is remorseful.
My client, in pleading guilty, recognizes his actions. He's accepting responsibility.
The judge assured the victims this is a zero-tolerance probation.
I give you my word. It's on my watch now. There will be no more survivors. This is it. It ends here.
But he was released, or he got probation. That's not good enough. That's not good enough for what the crimes he committed. Let's go through some of these. Antonio Cordero Rios, a Pflugerville man who pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and indecency with a child charges, has been granted 10 years of probation, according to the Travis County District Attorney's Office. He was accused of a series of disturbing incidents from June to December 2021, in which he allegedly followed women, exposed himself, and masturbated in public. The charges include aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, a second-degree felony, and indecency with a child, third-degree felony. Let's go into what these actions were. The first reported incident involved a woman who was assaulted while walking in the Austin area. The suspect grabbed her arm, touched her inappropriately, and exposed himself before she fell to the ground, sustaining a leg injury that required a surgery and a lengthy recovery period, according to court documents. In another incident, a woman with her 9-year-old son encountered a man sitting at a fire hydrant, taking care of himself. The suspect followed them briefly before driving away. The woman was able to take a photo of the suspect and an arrest affidavit. According to arrest affidavit. Detectives investigated multiple similar reports leading to the identification and arrest of Rios on December 10, 2021. During the arrest, he admitted to being in the area where the first victim was assaulted, but claimed any contact was unintentional. Sure, correct. It was unintentional, you pervert. This is why we must have tough on crime district attorneys. We have to stop this Soros-backed nonsense, and these laws must be fixed here in Texas. For the prior case that I'm referring to, there's no reason why a murder suspect should be back on the streets. You know, bragging about how he might escape, he might flee, bragging about the case. He shouldn't be on social media. He should be behind bars, point blank, period. So I'm glad that first case, they were able to get a $100,000 bail on this guy. In this situation here, he should be in prison for at least 5 years, at least, away from people, away from society. This guy has no business being out in the streets. But yeah, that's my opinion. Going to leave there right there. Like and subscribe. See you next time. Thank you. Take care.